What's up, y'all? This is Dre Franklin with Build 206, Brothers Uniting Leadership Development, with another episode of Stories from the Southend. I got my brother from another on here with me, Deaunte. So I'm going to bring him on the screen with us, and we're going to jump into this interview, and she's going to share some stories about his life growing up in the Southend.
Absolutely.
What's good with you, bro?
What's good? I am so honest to God. I've done interviews in the space, but when we talk about stories of the South End, like I was like hell. I seen the interview you did with Kofax, and I was like, wait a minute, like, and Brian's interview in the spaces of that. So I'm like, wait a minute, I got to be in on this, like, because when we talk about the South End, man, shit, like like. I was talking to people earlier, and I'm just like, what's the South End? What was the South? I'm talking about Super South End. I'm talking about Stock Market South End. I'm talking about King Center South End. I'm talking about Rose Petal, Lady M's South End. I'm talking about that South End.
Right. Columbia Plaza, Old Rainier, Tubbies and Tubbies.
When you was taking the pictures like this and shit,
Silver Forks wasn't even that long ago, but it's gone now, man.
Yeah. Silver Fork. They need to now. That's a restaurant that the community needs to try to bring back. Shout out to Larry, who was one of the best cooks in there. Definitely, Larry Fillmore, homie.
There was a lot of community organizing that went on inside of Silver Forks.
Absolutely, and some sneaky dates.
Some sneaky dates and some other stuff probably too. We're gonna leave that for another time. But let's jump in. So we can kick it off with you. You can share a little bit about yourself with folks. Just, for folks that don't know, you can share whatever you want to share. So I'm going to provide you some space to kind of give a little bit of history about who you are.
Yeah. Well, I'm Deaunte Damper. I'm super South End. It's like I'm from the South End area, Seattle. I wear many hats in community now, where I'm the chair of Black Lives Matter Seattle King County. I'm the co-chair for the LGBTQ Commission's office for the mayor's office for the city of Seattle. I'm also the vice president of WA Therapy Fund, which works really heavily in engaging community with Black therapists and getting Black therapists more money, because basically Black therapists make 16% less than their white counterparts, and we want to make sure that we fund people in that space. So those are the many hats that I wear. And I'm still a member of New Hope Baptist Church. But when it really all comes down to it, when I say the South End raised me, I mean that, and that's no shade towards. I was born. My first place where I lived as a baby was on Alder, but I came out here in the South End. So Columbia City, Rainier Beach area, that's Skyway. That's all me.
And you still live in the South End, right?
Still live here, Columbia City. I ain't gonna say where I live. Motherfuckers start popping up. You might owe somebody some money from 2009.
Yeah, we don't need nobody dropping no pins where you're at.
Right, I ain't dropping no damn pins, but I am in Columbia City, and I think that coming back home specifically to live in this area has been. That's like, for me, it's a full circle. It's almost to that full circle moment. I haven't made it to where exactly I want to be, but to be back home, like right down the street where I went to elementary school. I went to elementary school with your brother, Ramon.
That's what. So you went to Orca at Columbia.
Orca at Columbia. And see, Ramon ain't gonna tell nobody this, but he used to be a dancer. We got some old videos of him doing the Running Man to Eric Clapton, but we ain't gonna talk about that.
I believe it. And that was before before Columbia Plaza was there.
Yep, way before, and still was that school was extremely what everyone's doing in the spaces of like education and being inclusive to not just racial spaces, but inclusive to LGBTQ. That was such a great school to go to during that time, and everybody from the hood. Shout out to Leonetta. She was my first. That was my first ever bodyguard in the space. Her and Trey Lamont. So shout out to those brothers and sisters. So
yeah, Lily. I seen her at CD Panthers football practice. And it's all love. At the end of the day, we're all trying to build up everybody. At this point in the game. But I was like, man, Lily, I thought you was from the South, and she was like, I am, cuz. I was
like, the thing about it is you can't even play with her like that because it's real. Like, my son's playing for CD Panthers, but that's somebody now I can't wait for that interview when that comes. because hers
Yeah,
would be
I'm gonna
amazing.
start tapping in. Yeah, hey, I'm gonna need your help getting people up on this joint so we can really get it popping. But
Absolutely.
thinking back as a kid, what we want to kind of go back into, into our innocence, right? Before some of the stuff that we got involved in and decisions that we made and so on and so forth. But as a kid, what did you want to be, when you grew up?
What did I want to be? I mean, I honestly can say there was two things that I wanted to be, right? I think I wanted, well, one, I really wanted to be like a reporter. I wanted to be a reporter. I remember doing a project like in the 5th grade, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be like and not really like a reporter. I wanted to be like a talk show host. That's the shit that I wanted to. I wanted to be like Montel Williams and Oprah. That's what I wanted to be. And I think also like hell, and then there was a point in time where I did want to do like acting back in the day. So I was really in middle, little bit in the middle school and elementary school. I was really into performative arts. So I used to do ballet. I did ballet with Pacific Northwest Ballet when I was in the 3rd grade. And when there were shows for the Paramount that had like Broadway shows that would come here, they would scout out young youth. So I did a couple of those during that space, and I was doing a lot of those different plays, just mainly just ensemble stuff. But that was really, those are the two things that I can think of that I wanted to be. Those things changed once I got into high school, though, a lot.
Yeah, and that kind of dovetails into our next question. Did things get in the way of you being what you wanted to be? As a kid, just your imagination is wild. Opportunities are limitless, right? So I guess creating some space. Did things get in the way? And then if yes, what was that?
Hell yeah, things got in the way, right? So when you look at it, right, and people have to understand this, like, yeah, I'm from the Southend area of Seattle. And yeah, I have my culture here. I have my community here. But when it came down to that, I also was dealing with orientation spaces, right? So I am an openly gay man. And I wasn't open at that time, as if people didn't know, but I'm quite sure that they did. But I couldn't be myself in the South End. So then I would have to go. So then I go to spaces like Capitol Hill, and it'd be like they would affirm in the space of LGBTQ, and there'll be like I could sneak into the clubs at 16. Shout out to Hilra. But when it came down to it, there was nothing there for me culturally. So the thing that got into the way was I just really didn't know where I fit in at. And it turned into like me leaning on other things such as just clubbing and substances to get out there and just try to find myself. Like I remember when after finishing graduating from high school, I left. I got the hell up out of here. I can go to Florida. There's my community out there. I could be myself. I can create a new narrative for myself, but still not feeling like I can fit. I think I went through years of trying to like figure out who I was, because I also was a codependent person. A lot of people won't admit that because they think of it as a sign of weakness. But for me, I advocated for everybody in my space, but I really cared about what people thought about me. I really wanted to fit in. It didn't matter if you was gangster. It didn't matter if you or if you was a radio host, or it didn't matter what it was. Like I found myself just being dependent on what people thought about me, and I always kind of was in this big search of like finding out what that looked like for years. So,
and at some level, we all socialize. We all, that's why social media is so big. We care about what people think about us, and especially kids. That definitely is impactful for kids. So I think if you were able to transition into a point where you're more comfortable being who you are, which you should be able to be who you are and safe wherever you're at, right? It's being able to use those stories and the tools that you gain to help others navigate that. And so you kind of tiptoed into it a little bit, maybe some, a little bit getting into traffic, getting in the mix, getting into trouble, doing things that
and I'm talking about traffic in the mix.
Yeah. So
traffic in the mix.
Yeah. So when did you start getting in the mix? When you start getting into traffic?
Oh shit. I would definitely have to, if I can think of, if people really know, like my last couple of years of of high school. If y'all want to know like my favorite CDs at that time, it was a Twister Kamikaze, the Genie of the Lamp album by Mac Dre, and the Element of Surprise album by E40. And honestly, I got into that space, and what I mean by that, like hell, I started really just leaning into the spaces of traffic like around like junior year, the senior year specifically. Started popping more ecstasy pills to kind of try to just, I think it was more so of just this movement that was going on in the spaces of community because everybody was doing it. So I started doing it too. And not really even realizing that I'm not grounding myself. I'm not taking accountability for me to try to get control of myself. So leaning on those substances really had me all over the place. And I just named those CDs because those, when I think about, when you think, I know you know those albums, but either way, like, of just, sometimes we don't admit, like, what we do admit, but I admit during that space, I was very comfortable with being distracted, like very complacent in that. So.
Yeah, and you touched on it a little bit on some of the reasons why, trying to fit in, socialization, the music that you were consuming, the stuff that, was around you.
Those CDs aren't to blame, but I'm just saying.
But that's part of, what we take in, right? Especially if we're not comfortable in who we are and we're susceptible, and that's, it's a deeper conversation, which I don't think we're going to have time to get into. But, when you strip people of their history, it's easy to replace it with something new, right? You know what I'm saying? So, and those messages are easier. They can take deeper root than they would in other communities, because other communities consume the same stuff that we do, but it doesn't take as much root. They don't end up living the lyrics like we do,
Right, absolutely.
And so, thinking about that, you talked about it, a little bit, but like, what made you kind of want to get into traffic? Like what you talked, like I said, the music, you talked about the socialization around the friends and stuff like that. But
I think what made me just get into it mainly is just because, like, hell, I was dealing with identity issues. Like, hell, when you're a codependent person, you're leaning on everything else besides yourself. So I think spending those years of like it was also a coping mechanism, just leaning on that. And choosing distraction. I think that sometimes people don't even we don't admit distraction is an option too in between there. Like when you don't make a decision on following through with family and schoolwork. Because I mean, hell, I graduated like by the I did a lot of nights. I did do pretty good my junior year, but when it all came down to it, I finished good in school, but at the same time, I was still distracted, and I chose distraction a lot.
Right. So what could have stopped you from getting in the mix or getting in the traffic? What do you, just thinking back, like what types of supports or things could have helped you not have to be in a situation where you had to struggle with, or be codependent or struggle with, with those types of things?
I wouldn't necessarily say like things needed. I think more so it just really just took a time. When we look at the Black community, when we look at our community now, we are just now starting to get into the space of like, oh, okay, well, we are now affirming in the space of being inclusive to LGBTQ folks. The only organization that ever did that back then was POCAN, and that is it. If you can name me another one, I'll pay you $100. But there were no spaces available for people that look like me. Always felt like I had to go find another space. So I think it was more so of the affirming. There wasn't enough affirming for, I think, a little bit of both, right? Finding yourself jumping on white narratives as a person that's LGBTQ has been something that has been it's still happening in our community, So I say it's more so in the space of like, I didn't feel comfortable in my community because who the hell affirmed? Back then, nobody was playing that stuff, I have friends now that have reached out to me like, I didn't know, like, I treated you that way, or if I treated you that way, I apologize. And that shit means a lot in the spaces because that shit took time. Like, we went through a phase where it just wasn't cool, or whatever the hell that meant,
And I think this is critical at all times, right? But, especially with intersectionality within our community, when we're having conversations around public safety and what makes people feel safe, we need to make sure that we're giving everybody a voice to make sure that those things are happening. Like you said, we are in a better place in a lot of areas, but there's also always room to grow and improve.
Right.
So I appreciate you sharing what could have, those pressures from that made you or didn't make you, it made it easier for you to slip through the cracks or get involved in negative, destructive behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thinking about growing up in the South End, what core values did you learn growing up in the South End?
Honest to God, when I think about values, I think about my father. My dad worked at the shipyard, for years, and until 1990, where he started his own business. So if y'all ever hear about Blue Streak Towing, that is my dad. Stayed relentless, opened up his own shops. When Saturday mornings, when we were at home from school, or when we were ever home from school, even when we were sick, we were getting in the car with him as he took us on his toes. He remained relentless. When he had to go do door unlocks, he brought us with him in the spaces and teaching us finding your own lane. I wish I would have leaned more on that understanding instead of rebelling from that space. But my father taught me how to be relentless and always learn how to create your own lane.
I didn't know Damper was your dad.
Yeah.
Man, I was on the auctions. I bought tow trucks and stuff, kind of modeling what it was. But I mean, if anybody's really from the South and they done got a tow from Blue Streak Towing,
you're right. You got a tow from.
I might have this number still in my phone.
Yeah, I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure. Still the same. But the thing about it is building those relationships. And my dad was really heavy on being a part of community. When he used to go do his commercials for the Z Twins, which are still on now, right? He would take me there, meeting Frank P. Barrow, and just teaching me how he's hustling in the spaces for his own space. Being in the Emoja Fest with my dad with his tow truck in the space. This is before and this is no offense towards not Emoja Fest, the Black Festival at that time, right? Yeah. So now in the spaces, it's community organizations, but no, it was Black owned businesses that were walking in that space. How proud of it? How proud do you think that it helped me look up to my dad and just really just embrace the fact of that's what leadership looks like. It also, not just him, but I also got to thank my cousins. I got 3 cousins that were pretty good in fucking football in high school. And they always just made sure I never was, how can I put it? Wasn't never going to be no crying in our space, when it came down to it. I could never say can't with my cousins. Shout out to Damon, Komar, and Galen. I love them to death, but they always pushed me to try to be the best that I could be. Now, sports wasn't my damn thing, but they tried. I got to give some credit in that space. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot from them. You know what I mean?
For sure. So, have you been locked up before?
Oh, yes.
And
couple times.
Did that change you?
Absolutely. I went through a space where I allegedly committed a battery, and they put me on probation for it, and I was still just cutting up and doing extra stuff, and I ended up violating my probation, and they gave me 24 months in prison. So I wasn't, and this ain't no Seattle prison. I was down in the Florida camps. So if people look at the movie Life, you know how they're working on the side of the road. They don't have a strong Parks and Rec there. The prison, the people that are in prison are the Parks and Rec. So I had to do that. I did 17 out of 24 months. And before that, I did 6 months out of 12 at that same road prison. So I did that for about a year. Well, not a year, excuse me. I did 17 months off of that. And after that it changed me because it had me start to say to myself, hey, Florida ain't shit. Florida ain't shit when it comes, Florida ain't shit like this shit in Seattle would have probably got me probation in this space, but no, they really want to take me to prison here.
So
So
this really slavery right
yeah,
there.
this is real. This is real. This is turning into odds real quick. Like what the fuck is
Because life was set way back in the day, so it's
yeah,
like that's
it's
crazy.
real shit. And they see me with a weed whacker. They had my ass in the laundry room for like 17 months at that point. But after I think I got out of there September 2011, and then I moved back home with my dad. Within that space, that it changed me because it was like, I can't be out here. I used to professional borrow in stores often, borrow from one store, return to another, get the credit, do all that stuff. And at the end of the day, it just helped me just get a little bit more responsible. Found a job working at GameWorks, and then it segued into me doing stand-up comedy. So I started doing that for a minute.
And so was it the penalty? Like what made you change? Just like elaborate on that a little bit. Like what, was it like, I can't do this, or is it, like what was it?
Honest to God, the worst thing about prison is just the time. I'm missing out on so much. I lost so many friends when I was locked up. I felt like I missed out on so much time. Just that getting taken away. Building relationships with family members. I really I lost a lot of family members during that space, and on the verge of getting out, it was more so like engaging. When I was always in trouble, I never reached out to my dad because I didn't want to like be like that disappointment or all that shit. So like me reaching out to him was pretty much the change that happened, because like my dad is a person that will give you advice when you ask for it, right? But at that moment, being grown, getting ready to hit on, I think 26 or something, he was like, yeah, you got to get it together. You can come stay with me in this space. And thank God that happened, because everything just started aligning for me in this space once I moved back.
And you talked about it a little bit about your friends and family and stuff like that. So the next question is like, how did you go into jail? Because we know the impact isn't only on the person who goes, it's the impacts on the community at large. So like, how did that impact folks around you?
I think it was really, really hard because I don't think I was really being very clear with some of my friends, especially in the town in Seattle, about like the things that I was doing. So I think that really hurt a lot of people because I wasn't being transparent about what was happening, and a lot of friends cut me off because I was just doing too much. Family still stayed there. Family still stayed resilient in the space. I want to say it affected a lot. I think it was more so people just being disappointed in their mess. And I would more so say I think the most hurtful, the person that I think I hurt the most in that space had to be my mama, because it was just a lot for her. My mother and my twin brother, who was very, very much not very emotional person, but just me putting myself into those spaces. Some people, and I know there's some people in the spaces that might come on this show, like some people didn't have the option. I had a choice. And I can admit in that space I was just making the wrong decisions.
That's real. Sometimes we only focus on the person that's being penalized, right? Or whatever, but there's other impacts, especially when people have kids, or who's taking care of those kids, or grandma, mom, like people are picking up the weight, or even in relationships, how does it impact your relationships and stuff like that. So just we want to uplift that question, because we know it impacts the community as a whole. It's not just about the person. There's impacts across the board. So
absolutely.
I'm assuming I know the answer of this, but I'm going to ask the question anyways.
Okay.
Do you know anyone else who has been locked up?
Oh yeah. Shit.
So with that, so thinking about that, back to the question I just asked, like, how did that impact you, people around you being locked up?
Like back then, it impacted me a lot, because I think a lot of I had a friend like fresh out of high school get 25 years for a shooting that they did, and that was a lot because they grew up like me. They had a choice, and they I wouldn't want to say they made the wrong decision. They were defending themselves. So, but it was a lot. I had a couple of friends, I won't name drop them, but that got locked up. And the only thing that I thought to myself in those spaces, and even still now, making sure that I show up for them, whether it's like visiting them, it's not even the fact of what you send to them. They got babies out here. You should be showing up for their birthday parties, or seeing if the baby mama or baby daddy need anything, or grandma, if their grandma needs anything in the space. So I want to say it affected. There was no. I can just say it affected me in the spaces of like, how can I show up for this person while they're locked up? Now, I don't think I did a good job when coming of age in the space. I had some friends that got locked up, and I wasn't being the best of friend at the time. I think I was just trying to live my best life, and I've definitely atoned for that, because life happens. And I think that apologizing to some of those people that, I had some friends that I just didn't. I fucked up in the space.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to know what to do or how to do or whatever when you're dealing with that situation. There's no blueprint. So,
Right.
But I think it is always good to be able to be reflective and, try to make amends, what do you think could be done, or, thinking about like some of the stuff that we talked about, like what can we do to help this generation and the next generation stay out the mix, stay out of traffic, stop from making some of the decisions that we've made,
I think that one of the things about it is to be visible. And what I mean by that is like create pathways. It's not just about, I think one of the calls to actions for me to Black community leaders in the space is like, why the fuck does it have to always be us rallying together when we're shot by police? Could we be building other platforms of trauma, where like other areas of spaces where we can address other traumas? Like right now, I'm working with someone from Parks and Rec, and I'm building a space for parents of LGBTQ youth. And this is going to be a Black space. Really having a conversation about. We just need to start opening up more of the compass for our youth, because it's not just like juvenile impact. It's more than, can we hit them before their juvenile or prison pipeline impacted? And even if they are, can we be working as a cohort to create service plans for these cohorts, for these community members? Because really, when it all comes down to it, a lot of niggas are in the streets and saying break the prison pipeline, but ain't went to go speak on a nigga's behalf, not even once. That
Right.
shit kills me. That's the shit that I think probably pisses me off the most. Have you been in the spaces of actually showing up for these individuals? And what type of community representation could you give him? Because that prosecutor only already has a handwritten detailed narrative. But if people like you and me and other great community leaders that work into this space go in there and say, no, this is our community member, we're here for them, we can totally change the game of what that looks like.
Right. Yeah, the people really do have the power no matter what system you're talking about. And once we realize that, once we realize that and really start moving like that, the game is really over. So, you talked about, being able to advocate for folks and, some other even, safe spaces for healing, which is not enough, right? Sometimes a lot of the resources that are coming out or programs is always about, fix broken people when really we're not the issue. It's all these systems, and it's like fix broken people by putting them back into broken systems. You know what I mean? So it's like all the way backward. It's really an abusive relationship. But, you spoke about it a little bit. So just, thinking outside the box, like what supports do they and their families need? Because it's like you said, it's not just about the individual. A lot of times there's a structure around them that needs to be in place, and people need support. Like if kids are wilding out or whatever it is, like I know my mom, she had 5 kids and, we didn't have no dad. And it was like, there's only so much she really needed support from the community and providers and stuff, that were getting resources to do this, to really help reel us back in, because we were, it was some other. So, what do you think? Just like I said, being creative, what supports do we need, and especially if we're having conversations around defund, what are we going to fund? Like, are we going to fund the same stuff, or are we going to try to be creative?
No, we don't need to fund the same shit. That's just my personal opinion. Like all these other organizations or other community spaces that talk about defunding, well, the shit don't need to go to you because the shit didn't work before. So what can we be doing in the spaces of building what that looks like? And I'm talking about the whole diaspora of Black, from our elders. I think that we need to be doing something more to push in the spaces for our youth and our elders, especially our elders. And I think that we're not. I think that when it comes down to it, we need to be having more community events. Since everything is opening back up, and I mean, like things like that can bring us back together. And I'm not just talking about just like pitch a tent and we just do stuff. I don't know, talent shows. Let's start spotlighting our youth in the spaces of arts. Let's start having $5,000 prizes for artists 13 and under. People might think that that's very minimal, but it's something to me that I think would be great. I think that if we're going to defund police, I think we need to make sure that we're investing the money into some of our youth that are in some of the high school students that might be in these little league programs. Why can't we give them scholarships for 2 years in the space? That people might think that that's really small, but there's some youth that can't afford that shit. I mean, youth parents that can't afford that shit. And we need to come up with a damn mutual aid fund in the spaces to make sure, because I think that we need to also come to the understanding, like violence, we can have the tools to stop the violence in the community, but we need a fund specifically. The majority of that, some of that money needs to be going towards for those parents that are losing those people. I would say at least 100,000 of that a year, well, at least 100,000 of that a year should go towards that. Not saying, we're not hoping that happens, but the shit's been not to say we have the power to stop it, but we do have a space to, when we're talking about it, we want to make sure that we're in the space to protect people.
Yeah, and people need the resources. They need to navigate that process too, because nobody plans for that, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, people have life insurance and all that, but nobody plans for that tragedy to happen. And then now on top of that, you're in a capitalist society. Now on top of that, you got to deal with this financial hardship and trying to process.
Then you got to put on a damn GoFundMe. Then you know what I mean, and it's like, that's a lot. And then it's not just for the youth that are getting shot. I'm also talking about our elders. There's a lot of elders that are in the spaces that haven't. We need to have a fund to help our Black and brown elders in the spaces to make sure that their life insurances are covered. There are not very many programs that actually help people cover that, and it's people don't think that that's essential, but right. It's super duper important in the spaces for our community members, especially our elders that don't have those. That might not have the niece and nephew that's checking on them, or their grandchild that's checking on them in that space, or might be giving so much to community that it doesn't even cross their mind.
Right. And that is essential in building generational wealth, to make sure that you're not leaving debt, you're actually leaving things behind, or at a minimum, whatever you owe is covered, at that time. So instead of, people trying to figure it out. So I appreciate that, the thought process, and also just being open. And I think that's what we got to be, is we got to be creative, get back to our childhood thinking, and get outside of, trying to reform or plug into things that really haven't moved the needle.
The same shit that gives us the trauma, the same shit that they're like, well, we made another grant for you niggas. And here you go. It's about school to prison pipeline, just like how you said. Oh, it's about police accountability in the or youth in between this age. And we might give you guys housing. It just gives you first and deposit.
Right.
But all that shit is not. That shit's really performative. Right. Let's be innovative. I would love to use some of that money to fund the Black organizations that have had issues with affirming for LGBTQ, because I don't want my Black brothers and sisters and non-binary folks to be going to Capitol Hill to ask for those resources,
right?
To jump on that white narrative, to feel like they need to attack the other Black and brown brothers and sisters in the community, because when it all comes down to it, we can be working all together in this space.
Right. We have to, actually.
Yeah.
We really want to be effective. And that's what I'm saying. We got to be able to have space for everybody to show up who they are and work together. Now, everybody doesn't have to rock together, but we need to have a crosscut. If you're not rocking with all different aspects of the community, then you're not really doing real community work, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So transitioning a little bit, which is not really a transition, is, thinking about as a kid and even now, like, what goals do you have now? And like, what are things that you're interested in doing now?
I mean, man, I think that one of the things about it is my goals are limitless, especially when it comes to community advocacy. I just put in a form of, well, my business form to get my business license this week. So I'm officially starting my own program, and I'm not going to jumpstart it for another year or so, but I just wanted to make sure I did it. And it's called Brother, which is an acronym for Blacks Recovering, Overcoming Trauma, Health, and Awareness. Want to start honing down on health disparities, the prison pipeline, community advocacy. I already do this stuff, but I think it's just like really starting to build those type of programs so they can get approved for like when things are court ordered, for a brother to be a part of that. And that's like mentoring. That could be in so many different spaces. I think a lot of community members only look at one leg, but some people that are dealing with addiction also might need housing, also might need job placement, also might need mentorship. So that's one of the things that I'm thinking about in the spaces of the future. And I think the other thing about it is just figuring out, I still want to continue just to work in the spaces with community members. I mean, that shit always change. Like I've been doing things when it comes to for addiction, health disparities, LGBTQ affirming in the space, the prison pipeline, and literally, and right now I'm doing things in the space of advocating for young youth through foster care. And like the thing about it is, I just want to continue to be limitless until the day I die.
So what support do you feel you need to reach your goals? And I'm also going to take you back to the childhood stuff. Like you said, you wanted to be a show host. You said you want to do performing arts, stuff like that. Like, let's re-spark some of those things and see, what type of supports do you need? Just to think about even what you're talking about, like starting up your business and, trying to provide services or put services in place to stand up to support community. Like what support do you need in making that happen?
I think one of the things about it is just continuously just continue. I think this it's more so of like, I want the community representatives in the space. Let's continue to reach out with each other and as y'all say, build brick by brick. I think that one of the things that has helped me in the spaces since the city is open back up is the Build organization. We have these talks throughout the week, and it's more so of just like, where are you at? How are you working on it? How can I help you in this space? And it's just been so healthy from my own space, not just for the other brothers on the phone, but even from my own space, man. And the only thing I could just say is just continue just to reach out to community members. I don't really know what to ask community at this point, but I'm just more so just like, let's just continue to show up for one another. It's a mutual thing, right? So if that answers your question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it did. And that's what I mean, sometimes it's the simple things is, hey, how are you doing? How was your week? What do you got planned for today? Just having that space to be able to have simple communication. Right. It's not rocket science. It's as Rico would say, it's social science. Like it's it's like just checking in on one another in an authentic way, not looking for nothing or how can I leverage you to do some other shit. It's really like, brother, how are you? How can I support you and vice versa? Let me get some of this stuff that's it's kind of therapeutic, right? To be able to be in space with folks, shoot the shit.
Yeah.
With no real agenda, no action steps that are coming, but action's gonna come because once you build the relationships, then it's everything else is layups,
Yeah, absolutely.
So what have you done during this time, this past year, in general, like really to take care of yourself?
That's a good damn question. Last year during the pandemic, it was really a lot because I was so used to just being busy and everything just cut off. And I literally went through, my depression got so deep to where I relapsed. Never talked about that in the space, but at the end of the day, this is Southend. I'm just gonna keep it real. I relapsed, and it was something, and it happened so quick. But I thank God for my community people in the space. So going to therapy was extremely important. I have walked a little bit. I ain't doing the 10 miles like yourself, brother. But I think that one of the things about it is being very learning to create that boundary, like when I don't have the capacity, when something's going on, I'm so used to saying, "Oh, I'll keep on doing it," or "I'll work with it," or "Oh, that's okay." No, I'm learning that. I encourage people in our community learn the power of no, because you saying yes all the time will turn into something very unhealthy, and then you find yourself being stretched so thin and end up in places like no different from myself or other people in the space, and it's really essential to know the power of no and be careful what you spiritually eat. I've been careful what I spiritually eat from people. Not
Right.
everybody that's around you is really wants you to be the best that you can be. Some people just want you to be at that level where they're at that level. Or
Right.
some people are at that level and want you to come back down to that level. So learning that boundary of and knowing what you spiritually eat from people is extremely important for when we get back outside. So
That's real, and I appreciate your transparency on what you've been through, and just know that there's no ups without downs, right? There's no good without bad. So it's all part of life. So I appreciate your transparency, because like sometimes we want to front like not like everything's all good and all gravy, right?
absolutely, I
But
think like doing the stuff with like the NAA, the other organizations like the NAACP, and you see all these things, that the accolades and all this stuff. The minute I relapsed, I thought to myself, like, oh my God, what is people going to think about me? Oh shit, I gotta quit. Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. How bad is this? Fuck that. Fall 7 times, stand up 8.
right,
My story I will continue to have. I will continue to have ups and downs, because that's what life is all about. If you are just living just a straight and narrow life, then you ain't living. And
right,
at the end of the day, I will always be a person living with HIV. I will always be a person, a part of the LGBTQ community, and I will always be a person that's in recovery. And at the end of the day, if I can't be transparent with my community about what the fuck that looks like, then ain't nobody serving shit. Ain't
right,
nobody doing the job that they claim to be doing. If they choose to knock me because of that specific thing, then fuck them. They're not the community leader that I want to work with.
right. That's
And
100.
people want to highlight DMX and all that other shit, but who are you showing up for that went through a space of addiction? Because we got them right here.
Right. That's real, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I asked that question around, like, what are we doing? Because one, we need to hear people. If we are doing a good job on taking care of ourselves, people need to hear that, right?
Yeah,
Especially as Black men, you know what I'm saying? We need to be able
absolutely.
to say, this is what we're doing to take care of ourselves. And if we're not, it's an opportunity for us to challenge and community to check in and friends to check in and say, hey, brother, like, let's, as a matter of fact, like, I'm challenging you, like, we can get in some walks. I've been doing at least 2 miles a day
Yeah.
for the last
Nigga, I'll give you 2.
30 days.
Sorry, excuse me, brother. I'll give you 2, but I ain't doing no damn 10. I mean,
No, I
I got
didn't do,
you.
it wasn't 10 straight. I did 3 different walks. So it was like a 4
Okay,
mile, and 6 mile, and a 2 mile. But yeah, we
y'all.
could do
This is a walking motherfucker here.
it's it's
I'm sorry,
it's
sorry for
it's,
cussing, but
it's
hell.
all good. It's crawl, walk,
Okay,
run, man. Like, that's kind of been like my outlet, stress reliever. Let me get
that's
out, take a
amazing.
break, put things on pause, and let's go. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
becoming a little bit addictive. I already got an addictive personality when it comes to doing stuff. So
Yeah.
why
Well, let
not?
me know the next walk that you have that's under 2. That's
I'm
under
watching
2.
every day. We'll text and lock down a time that works for both of us, and we'll make it happen. So that's
Okay.
easy. Because I'm walking every day, so it's just when it fits into the schedule. So we'll have to just coordinate a time. It's nothing. So the last question I have is not really a question for you. It's I try to be equitable. I've been kind of controlling the conversation. So really, the last question is: do you have any questions for me?
Yes. Um, what what advice would you give to the youth in the spaces of this community right now? What call to action would you give to the youth?
Understand the power that youth have. I mean, any movement that was really anything has always, the fuel, the fuel for the fire has always been young folks, from the civil rights movement to the Black Lives Matter movement to anything else. It's really like this understanding the power that they really have, understand that those teachers in the schools work for you, all these service providers, all these different people that say that they're doing this, that they actually work for you. They're your employee, so really understanding that and holding them accountable and asserting yourself. It'll be uncomfortable a little bit because there's a power and control dynamic because it's an adult or authority figure. But at the end of the day, if all kids decide they weren't going to school, guess what? Some things would change. You know what I mean? So that's what I would say is really understanding the power that you have, and, don't get caught up in the moment because, there's chapters for everything. I know sometimes people really get, like you talked about a little bit, like worried about what people think about you. But, a lot of times those chapters are very short and your life is, hopefully long and fruitful, and that chapter may not be there. You may not be reading the same chapter 5-10 years from now, so those people that you're worried about, concerned about, probably aren't going to be around you in 5-10 years from now. And then if you continue doing things to impress them, you may end up in a place or in situations that you don't want to be. And then a lot of times they're really going to be MIA in those types of situations. I always say, or E40 said, when you're up, everybody's around. When you're down, no one could be found. You know what I'm saying? That's a real bar. So really that, just making sure that, you're making decisions, you're hanging around people who you want to be, really reflecting that you're making moves, which is hard when you're a kid. When you're an adolescent, even as an adult, sometimes it's hard to be like, am I really who I want to be? Am I really making moves? Is this really what I want to do? But really the power, I think I would really, encourage them to assert the power that they really have and understand that there's a lot of things moving around that's really about them. You know what I mean? It's really, people have jobs because of kids and youth. But really asserting that. So that would be my, free game to them if it was game.
Yeah, that was game.
So we're going to wrap this up. I appreciate you, brother, for making time to coming on here and sharing your stories. Looking forward to continue to do community work with you. And like I said, if you want to be a host of a show, let me know and we can make it happen, man, for sure.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, bro. Peace. All right. Once again, that's the episode of Stories from the Southend, Brothers Uniting Leadership Development. We're trying to create opportunities for people to have voices out here, and definitely want to highlight amazing folks that grew up in the Southend of Seattle, Super Southend. So until next time, all right, peace.